Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Silvates podcast. Today, I have Brit Tate joining me, who's an osteopath extraordinaire, and we are going to talk about her sports, her competitions, what it's like studying at BCom, and just how she's been getting on a year after graduating. So, welcome, Brit.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining me. I know how busy you are competing, so I'm just so thankful to get a slot with you and just talk about all
Oh,
things
bless you. I
osteopathy.
know we have been trying to do this for about 5 months, haven't we?
Better late than never.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so how we know each other is we studied together for 4 years,
Yeah.
and holy moly, that was an intense ride in itself.
Yeah, very
Um,
intense. It seems like a different lifetime now, doesn't it? It feels like a different life. So weird.
I often compare it to childbirth, whereby, not that I've ever had given birth, or nor
Yeah,
will I ever give
I'm sure
birth.
it's more painful.
You know what? I'm sure there are people in our class or people who have graduated that are probably thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the way I think about it is it's painful when you go through it and then you finish it and then you forget how painful the
Oh,
experience is.
totally. And then you're like, oh, it was great, wasn't it? Really
Yeah.
good. Yeah, so easy.
Would you ever go back and do another degree or like a master's or anything like that?
Do you know, it's funny. I vowed I would never do any education again. Like, I was like, that was it. I can't do that ever again. And then like a year on, I'm like, I could probably study again, but I don't think I could do the same level of intensity again like that. And the dissertation for me, that was a killer. So if it involves something like that, I would be very like, I would really have to think hard about whether I wanted it to sort of implement my life like that again, because it was really brutal.
Yeah. So maybe not a PhD then.
No, definitely not a PhD, because for me the research was just not something I'm interested in. Like, and I know the value of it, and like I think it's important to read up on other people's research, but for me to actually do it myself, I just don't. I can't do that to myself again. It was so hard.
I
Yeah,
feel
so
like
I think probably not.
I feel like we're really selling the course to people who
Oh
are listening
yeah,
in.
really, really selling it. Yeah, it's great. Absolutely brilliant. No, it
Become
really is though. It is actually like life changing in terms of what it's accomplished for, and how it's opened doors for me. Like, because obviously I was doing sports therapy before, so I was kind of in the industry already. So that was why it was quite a difficult choice to do, because I was kind of like, I'm already kind of doing I'm in the industry, like what's this going to do for me, that and what is this going to achieve? And like, obviously spoken to the osteopaths that I was working with, they kind of told me, and I could see how busy they were as well, and the kind of cases that they were treating, and it was more complex, and you were using your brain a bit more and trying to work out different things, and it opened up more complex cases, and I could see that that's something that I did want to do. But it really has done that. Like, it is a completely different career, and it's so, yeah, no, it's really good. Like, I've absolutely benefited from doing it, so that's a
yeah.
good job.
That's the plug. You're welcome,
Exactly.
BCom.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly it. Yeah.
So you're a sports therapist, like you said before. What made you want to go into osteopathy?
I think it was really the osteopath I was working with. So I was working in the local osteopathic practice, and I worked there for 3 years as a sport therapist. And as I was doing that, I was kind of trying to be a semi-pro well, I was a semi-pro cyclist at the time. And basically, at the point I was deciding of what to do, because I was getting more and more frustrated about having to refer patients to the osteopath for joint work, because as a sport therapist, we didn't really get taught anything that much about joints, or really how to work with them, or anything about the nervous system, or the blood vessels, anything like that. You just learn basic musculoskeletal skills of how to treat basic sports injuries, and fascial work, a lot of fascial work actually. But really, in terms of like the joints, as soon as someone had a back that they were in pain with, and I'd done the soft tissue work and they were still in pain, I'd nowhere to go. So I referred to the osteopath, and I was doing that more and more, getting more frustrated. And then I was also getting cases coming in that were getting more complex, like more of the senior citizen patients with like all medications and heart problems, and we weren't taught pathology in sport therapy. So I was like, we were taught how to treat healthy sports people. So when people came in with conditions or weird stuff, or like conditions that we hadn't been taught about, even things like RA and stuff like that, which we get taught so much about in osteopathy, I was like, I don't really know what to do with this patient. I don't know if it's safe to treat them. Am I going to hurt them? And I was just getting more and more like out of my depth. And that's when I decided I think I need to do osteopathy. And then it was a choice because I basically got offered a pro contract as a cyclist, and the money was just awful. The money was awful. It was like, yeah, it was actually quite like, yeah, you just can't live off that. So I think you have to like absolutely love the sport. In domestic pro in the UK as a cyclist, you really, really have to love it to do that. And I just didn't really like it. So I was like, I think that's the way for me to go, is go and do a career and just and try something different. And that's when I went and did osteopathy, really, in London.
Yeah, and one thing I remember vividly was whilst you were all studying, it was 4 years, you kept competing throughout.
Yeah. Yeah, which was kind of weird because, so I came in obviously as a cyclist because I had been a triathlete when I was 16 and got injured with the running, and that's what actually led me into cycling. I did that for 6 years. And then when I came to uni, I decided that, because I've always done sport competitively, I've always been into sport. So I decided that I was like, right, this is the time of life. I'm going to be a uni student and I'm not going to do sport. And I was like, because it was really different for me to do. So I was like, I'm just going to have I didn't even thought, I'm just going to not do sport. So I was like, for the first term, I didn't do any sport, and I literally just went out boozing like every weekend. I don't even remember, but we had some amazing times, didn't we? Really, like it was just mad, and like we were just going out all the time, and I was partying, and I was like, this is amazing. I was like, this is what people do in life that don't do sport. This is so good. And I literally I'm not actually joking, I put on 2 stone in 2 months. I came home at Christmas and my boyfriend was like, whoa, what has happened to you? And then I realized as well, after like a term of doing that, the first term, I just didn't feel good in myself. Like I felt it was weird. I couldn't concentrate at uni. Like I had no concentration levels. It didn't like feel good in my body. Like I was obviously having a good time, but there was something really missing, and I felt not right, and I mentally didn't feel very like I was having a great time, but then I was kind of like I just didn't feel quite myself. So that's when after Christmas I decided, right, I need to do some sport. So I tried all sorts of different stuff. I remember going with Katie to a Muay Thai. Do you remember when we went to Muay Thai? That was very funny. It was a really funny experience in Bethnal Green, which was an interesting experience in itself, walking through there. And we went to this Muay Thai lessons, and we were just like kicking and boxing. I was like, yeah, this is going to be my new thing. I was like, yeah, brilliant. And then I realized, like, I was like, cool, I'm really enjoying this. Like, right, I'm going to look at the competition, because I'm just naturally, like, with sport, I'm just a competitive person and I can't just do something for fun, I realized. So I remember spending one night just like looking at these Muay Thai competitions, and I was up till like 3 o'clock in the morning. And afterwards I was like, I am never going back ever again, because it was just all these females like just crazy, like beating each other up and stuff, and I was like, that's not me. So I was like, Katie, I'm sorry, I can't go back anymore. And that's when I decided, right, I think I want to do triathlon again, but I had this hip injury. So it was actually James Dawson. Do you remember James? So we were year 1 and he was year 4. And he basically helped me sort my hip, got me back running again, which was actually has just opened up my life. Like, it's been amazing. So I'm eternally grateful to him for that, really. And that's when I started getting to triathlon. So that was kind of January, February of year 1. And I just wanted to get back running, to be honest. Like, just to be able to run for 5 minutes was a big thing at that point. And so I built up really slowly over that first sort of till about March and April, where I was basically able to run like half an hour again without much pain. Like, I've still got pain in that hip, but I can manage it now. And then obviously being me, I was like, well, I'm doing triathlon again, so what shall I do? Oh, I'm going to aim for the world champs. So the world champs in that year one of uni was in Cozumel in Mexico, and I was like, right, that's it. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And that was in August or September. So year one was basically juggling, like kind of prepping for that, and then obviously getting to grips with all the uni side of things. But for me at that time, that triathlon was just a complete joy to be able to do it again. And I was just so relieved to be able to run again. But yeah, so that was that, and then it's just carried on from there really. Like each year, then I got year one out of the way. Year two, obviously the course changed. It got a lot more intense, I would say. Like year two was probably one of the hardest years for me, I'd say, in terms of theory wise. But then I'd got an expectation with triathlon because I did really well at World Champs, and I was like, right, okay, I think I can do this again. And then it's just slowly kind of progressed through the years, and that it was definitely challenging doing both, but they both complemented each other as well. So I'm glad I didn't just drink my way through uni, basically.
Yeah, and I don't think it's you really, because when I think of you, you know, you're naturally an athlete, and you've naturally got this competitive edge, and you want to do better, and not just sporting wise, but also academic and for your patients. You always want to give more, and that's one of the things that really resonated with me about you, and one thing I always tried to emulate. I was like, well, if Brit can wake up at 5:30 in the morning to go for a swim, I did not do that. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, bless you. That's really nice. That's really sweet.
I tried getting up for like 6 o'clock, and even that was a struggle. I was like, how does she do this?
It's not my favorite part of the training, I must admit.
No, because I'd see you napping every time you had an opportunity.
I just slept tonight at that sofa. I was just on it at uni. That sofa. If that sofa wasn't there, I don't know what I'd have done. Like that. Oh yeah, I love that sofa. It was so good.
And so for people who aren't sort of familiar with the sporting world and don't know what a triathlon is, what does that entail?
So triathlon is 3 sports. So you start with your swim, which I always think is a bit bizarre because then you're wet for the rest of the race. But anyway, that's how they devised it. So you do a swim, and then you do a bike ride, and then you do a run. And it's all the transitions are included. So your transitions count, so they're timed. So it's all about how quick you can, run in from the swim, get your bike helmet on, your shoes, run out, run in with your bike, take your helmet off, change into your shoes. So that's all part of the thing as well. And there's different distances. So you can start at a sprint. So that's what I started off in year one doing, because that's I was familiar with that when I was 16. That's the distance I did. And you can go all the way up to Ironman, which is you're ending in a marathon. So I've kind of progressed through, and now I'm at kind of half Ironman stage, and that's kind of where I think I'm going to be staying for quite a while, doing that discipline. But yeah, I think so the last year of uni, I was doing half Ironman, so I did 3 half Ironmans. I was in one in Thailand, one in Romania, and one in, where was it, Barcelona. And then that I was also like trying to do my dissertation at that point, so I was like flying out to Thailand, like typing on my thing, like trying to talk about some strange biomechanics whilst I was like on a flight to Thailand to do a half Ironman. It was a very bizarre year, but it was amazing. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at the minute, is the longer distance stuff. I think I'm probably going to be better at that. But yeah, that's what it entails. It's hard, but it's fun.
I can't even go for a 30-minute run. But what kind of demand does that put on an athlete's body in terms of recovery, in terms of nutrition? Because I know you're heavily involved with those kinds of things as well.
Yeah, so it's a heavy toll on the body, I think, like, because you're trying to juggle 3 things. So it's quite different, because when I was training for cycling, you do your bike session or whatever, and then you're done for the day. Whereas with a triathlon, it's always double sessions in a day, so you're always doing 2 sports, sometimes 3 in a day, because you've got to juggle them. So let's say you do something like 3 swims, 3 bikes, 3 runs, but you've also got your strength and conditioning, which is the 4th discipline, and I've learned over the last year and a half really that how important that is. And so you've actually got 4 sports really, because you've got your strength and conditioning as well. And in terms of recovery, I think it is difficult. I think you're always tired. and it is hard to recover. And I think especially if you're working as well, the recovery time is reduced even more. So, and I like my sleep. So I think the sleep thing is hard because the swimming takes that away, because you're getting up at like 5 really to go swimming, and then if you're coming home from work at 8, like you've only really got an hour or something before you need to be getting into bed. And sometimes you actually just want to like watch some films, or like, you know, have a speak to your partner or something. So that's challenging, I think, is we're trying to do the discipline, 4 disciplines and work is definitely challenging in terms of recovery, because I don't think you get enough sleep. That's my concern with it. And nutrition wise, I think very difficult again, because if you're working, especially with patients, you can't just like sit there and like eat a bar like whilst they're talking to you. So especially if you're back-to-back patients, you have your lunch break, but within that lunch break you've got to be really prepared about what you're trying to eat. And I always find that it's very difficult to eat enough during a day, and sometimes I have to supplement that with, you know, protein shakes or things like that, because just to get the calories in, especially if you're in between clients or patients, if you've got a calorie shake or something, you can smash that in and try and get some calories in between patients. But it is challenging to get enough sleep and enough fuel when you're working and trying to do 4 disciplines, I think.
Yeah. And so now, you know, it's almost pretty much been a year since we graduated. How has competing been since graduating and not having sort of the study time or the practical time taken up by school?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would have been great, but obviously with COVID, like there's been no racing. So it was kind of a bit annoying, because like I definitely felt like your brain, you're because you're not so, like you're physically exhausted, I'd say, from training and working, but you're not mentally exhausted. Like in some respect, it is challenging still. Like the first year of being an osteopath is mentally challenging, but not in the same respect as studying. Like it's almost like a different challenge. I can't really explain it, but there's more mental energy to put into training, because you can kind of like with work, even when it's challenging at the time, you can, when you go home, you can switch it off and put it away. Whereas with studying, it comes with you all the time. It's never, you're never rid of it. Like, so when you were training, you were always thinking, you're trying to juggle how much time you needed to get the material in your head. Whereas with work, it's very challenging, but you can switch it off and you can actually I can't say the word, compartmentalize.
Compartmentalize.
That's the one. You can put it away and you can then go, right, switch into training and think and like actually like devote your mind to that. So in terms of that respect, that's a lot easier, because the studying like saps you. It's like with you all the time. It's always in the head, like in the back of your mind, and you can't get rid of it. Whereas with work, it's much easier to, you know, shift that, put it away, train, and then if you need to think about it again, bring it back in. So in terms of mental energy, it's been a lot easier to get a lot more out of my body that way. But obviously with the racing, like that's been rubbish. Like everything was cancelled, world champs, Europeans, all the kind of, because this year I wanted to do some half Ironmans and actually like put myself against the pros and see where I was at, and like kind of get a, you know, a good kind of idea of where I stand with that. And that's just all been like cancelled. But there have been some really good things that have come of that. Like, because you can't race, your training is more consistent, like if you've got the right head on it. And like I think my running's improved a lot, because I'm not racing. You're not, when you race, you have to like recover and then recover from the race, and then you have to be fresh for the next one. So there's only a short period of time where you can actually train, whereas if you're not racing, you can train all the way through and just build up nicely. So in terms of that, that's been good, but not racing sucks. Yeah.
Yeah, I can
That's been
imagine.
tough.
Yeah. And so how has it been being an osteopath, like a fully fledged osteopath, no tutors to call into the room or anything like that? How's that been, your first year of a practicing osteopath?
I mean, it's been incredible. I've absolutely loved it. It's been so challenging. Like, if you think of like what, you know, like the Corona coaster, your mentality of like 1 minute you're up, 1 minute you're down. Like, I feel like that is reflected in osteopathy in your first year. Like, some days you're like up, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, I am so good. Like, and then the next day you're like, oh my God, I'm absolutely shit at this. Sorry, my French. But yeah, like, it is definitely reflective of a roller coaster. And I think it's your ability to know that it doesn't reflect on you, your own ability. Like, it's just who you see that day. Like, you might have a day of chronic pain patients that just don't really get better, and you're more managing them, and you're managing their expectation, and you're managing them as a person. And then you might just get a day of like fairly simple, you know, lower back cases that you can manipulate, a little bit of soft tissue, and they get better really quick. And so what I'm learning is that how you feel on a day shouldn't reflect on your ability as an osteopath. It's just who you've seen that day, and how you've worked with them, and how they perceive their expectation of how they're doing. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think that's how I'm kind of seeing it, as I'm getting better at that, like working out when you're having a bad day, why do you feel that has been a bad day, and then trying to reflect on that. And you normally realize that actually you come out of it, and it's not because you're a bad osteopath, it's just because you've had challenging cases that day, or you need to build on an aspect of your practice, and actually that's really positive, because then you're going to get better at that. So that's been good. But in terms of the first year, I mean, obviously I started 2 weeks after I graduated, so I was straight into it, so I didn't really have a break, which was quite tough actually, because like by Christmas I was tired, because I'd been working since August, and the practice that I went into, the principals were on holiday for like 3 weeks, so I was like right in at the deep end. I was seeing a lot of patients straight away, and I just graduated, and I was like, wow, this is nuts. So it was really good, because I learned fast. I learned really, really fast, but that was challenging. But I think it bode me well, because I did learn quite quickly. And I think by Christmas I was ready for a break, to try and just absorb all those treatments that I'd had, and try and, you know, work out, you know, where I was going with things. And so that was quite good at Christmas, to have a bit of a break. And then obviously this COVID thing hit in March, so we had like 8 weeks off. That was super challenging, in terms of like, because you're self-employed, and that was really that was a massive, really interesting as well. That was really interesting, that lockdown period.
In what way?
Yeah.
How was it interesting? How was it challenging for you?
I think because, so initially, your income goes to nothing, and at that point we were just building up our, like, since sort of August, we were just building up our finances. We'd moved into a rented property, me and my partner. He was still just at that point he'd gone self-employed 2 weeks before lockdown, so he had no financial security at that point either. So both our incomes went to zero. We were both self-employed, and we didn't really have much savings or a safety net, because with uni, it just destroyed any savings. And so we didn't really have much of a safety net. So it really, really wobbled me, and I was like, am I in the right career? Do I feel financially secure doing what I'm doing? And it really, like, I had to really, like, think. I actually looked at all other options. I looked at NHS work, like yourself. I looked at other options. And at the end, I came around and thought, I just really enjoy what I'm doing. And I really like the clinics I'm in. And I was really, really enjoying it. And it would be a real shame for this because this doesn't happen, you know, normally. It'd be a shame for this to send me down another path that potentially I don't want to do, just because of financial security. And actually, at the end of the lockdown, I was feeling super positive about wanting to continue be a self-employed osteopath in the clinics I was in. And actually I decided that I really, really missed the work I was doing, and I was really keen to get back to it. And when we got back, it was actually like crazy busy, like busier than it was pre-lockdown. I think quite a few people have found that. And I've actually been better post-lockdown than I was pre. And in terms of like, I think just a number of patients coming and new patients coming in, and it's just absolutely booming at the minute. And I think it's been a really good confidence builder and helped me kind of confirm that I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah. And why do you think you've had this influx of people coming in post lockdown?
I think it's a couple of things. I think one, people have been sat like this at a desk at home, like on their laptops, like on their kitchen table with kids running around, and so they're like, we've seen loads of neck pain and headaches. So I think desk position, people aren't set up at home properly, and they're working from out of positions that they're not used to, so the body's taking a strain that it's not used to. I think same for the lower backs in that position. I think a lot of people are doing a lot more sport, because in lockdown a lot of people are taking up running. People are coming in with a lot of plantar fasciitis. I've seen that, like I was like, what is this with like plantar fasciitis? And I think it's because people are walking around in their bare feet at home, and then without much support, which they're not used to normally, and then they're going out and doing runs and loads of exercise, HIIT classes, things that they weren't really doing before. And I think also it's made people a bit more health conscious. I think people have gone, oh, actually, like, but I need to look after my health. So I think people have decided to invest a bit more in that as well. So I think those things, I think the new patients are people that have desk-based or exercise increase. And then I think in terms of it's really reconfirmed for the patients or clients coming in for sort of your maintenance treatment. So they were already invested, but they're investing again, and they're telling their friends, let's invest in our health, kind of thing. So I think that's been helpful.
And how interesting that it takes a global pandemic for people to reflect inwards and be like, actually, what's important to me? What do I need?
Exactly.
What's going to make me feel better in the long term?
Yeah, definitely. It's been really interesting about that. And there's been some really interesting cases coming in with people post-COVID, sort of viral inflammatory repercussions of the COVID, and that's been really interesting working with those people. And it's really changed my opinion on kind of the virus and what it's doing to people and what it potentially might be, and it's really interesting. It's quite shocking as well, actually. Really, it's seeing these people in such a bad way, actually, post having the infection. So that's been interesting working with them as well, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that really now over the next few months, of people with post-viral symptoms, musculoskeletal as well as inflammatory. So that's been an interesting sort of aspect going back into work after lockdown. We're seeing different kinds of things as well.
Yeah. And so to quote Lazarus, with God, he'd get a kick out of this.
Oh God, what are you going to say here? He's
So
still in
to
my
quote,
brain.
I know, I have his brain seared, his voice seared into my
Every time
brain.
I see a woman, yeah.
And it's like, okay, so what are your aims when you see someone who's post-viral and have all these inflammatory sort of symptoms or things? What would your aim for your treatments be with them, for example?
I think toxin removal, I don't know, detoxing.
Yeah.
And I think because it's been interesting, there's actually a COVID clinic in Bradford, which is the only one in the UK that actually works with post COVID sort of patients with post-viral symptoms. So what we're finding is a lot of people with like really, really heavy legs, like really, like they said, they're like growing pains, and like they feel like their legs are being pulled apart. And then I had a lady that's getting some inflammation on the brain as well, which is causing symptoms. And I think it's been interesting. So they're actually working a lot with nutritionalists, and I think that's really cool. And also counsellors and physiotherapists. And I think we do have a role as an osteopath to play for them, and working with those clients, just literally the soft tissue work of like flushing out and lymphatics and talking about nutrition and hydration and things has been probably the most beneficial for them at the minute. So I think my aim for them is try and restore the homeostasis, and just try and reduce their toxicity. I can't speak today. Toxicity level, yeah. That's kind of that's how I go in with it, really, thinking about trying how I can help them.
Yeah, and I completely forget. So if you can't already tell, Brit is from the north. And you've had this surge up there in the last month or so.
Yeah.
With cases, COVID cases.
Yeah, so we had a local lockdown, which was challenging because you go from being in a big lockdown and they were like, yeah, we're free, and then we're like, no, we're not. And then it was like, yeah, so that was, and then I think we're gonna have another one in Leeds again. So I think we're gonna have another local lockdown in Leeds coming because we have a big surge coming through again. And so I work in a clinic in Ilkley and I work in a clinic in Leeds. So how that will affect the Leeds clinic will be interesting to see. I think we are technically classified as key workers, aren't we? So I think the clinic will remain open. But whether we will see more post-viral patients at Leeds now, that will be interesting to see, yeah.
And that's been really interesting because we have seen these cases, we've seen these regional lockdowns, and no one that I've talked to just yet has been talking about sort of treatments post-COVID and what an important role osteopaths can play with that in terms of the lymphatics, like you mentioned, and just restoring their health and looking at their vitality, and especially coming from a naturopathic background as well. That plays a huge, huge role. So definitely. Going back to BCom then, what were your expectations before you graduated, and have they sort of met up with what you found 1 year into practice?
It's a good question. I think my expectations were just to get into work and earn some money to start with, because obviously as a student you spent a long time not doing that. So I did want to financially kind of feel stable in a respect, because I'd made the leap to move straight out with my boyfriend rather than stay at home, which I don't know, I think it was the right thing for our relationship, but in terms of adding pressure onto my first few months as an osteopath, quite challenging, I think, because even though I went straight into treating sort of 12 to 15 a day, so it was really, I had a Wednesday off, which I train and stuff, so 4 days a week. So I think financially I was fine, even though I was stressing about not being fine. So I think if you've got the chance, if you're of a certain age or you already live with your parents or something, and you're not in that position where you feel like you maybe need to jump straight into, because I mean we've been going out for like nearly 8 years by this point, and we'd lived with my parents before, and then we'd spent 4 years apart, and it was just at the point of our relationship we needed to live together and develop our own thing. So we needed to do it, but I think it did add pressure, because if I was living at home during that first few months, I would have been earning money, I'd been thinking this is great, and I would have had no pressures on. I'd have been able to concentrate more on the osteopathy rather than thinking just about finances, and I think that would have been good. But when a lot of us aren't in that situation, a lot of people already have families, have bills to pay and things like that. So I think it did, it was a real world. We're straight into work, we're straight into, having things to pay for. And in that respect, I put pressures on myself in that respect that I probably shouldn't have, because I was able to earn the money, but I was stressing about not being able to. It was really weird. I was doing it, but then I was like stressed that I wouldn't be able to do it. So I was like, but I was doing it. It was really weird. And I think that's just self-employment and, going back into that state of needing to pay for stuff, and then can you do it, setting off. And I was doing it, and it was just, it's taken me quite a while to build confidence, to think I'm okay in what I'm doing, I'm going to be fine, and I can build a good life like this. And it's taken me about a year to get the confidence to relax actually, and think I'm going to be all right doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, because there is a financial risk, obviously, being self-employed. And I think after school, you think, how am I going to earn a living to pay for anything? Am I going to get enough patients to walk through the door? After I
Exactly.
pay my cut to the clinic, what am I going to be left with? And I
Yeah.
think for anyone listening to this who's either graduated or is in school now, it's a worry that we all have.
Yeah.
And that's partially why I went into the NHS, because it was salary based. There
Yeah.
was a bit more security. You probably earn a lot more than me. But there is that trade-off.
Yeah, there's a trade-off, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
I think that's true. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And I think it is a gamble. And I think if I was going to like look back at that first year, and I would just say to myself, like, you are going to be completely fine, just relax. I can enjoy learning and the process and stuff a bit more, because you're going to be fine. You're going to be absolutely fine. Yeah.
yeah, and where you're at now, like, how important has it been to work with other osteopaths or receive any mentoring around you from either people you work with or online? How has that been for you? And
Yeah,
how
that's
important
been
was that?
really important. So I'm in two practices. So one has 17 osteopaths, so it's a big practice. And they've also got podiatrists, nutritionalists, massage. They have everything. It's a very big multidisciplinary practice. And the other practice, there are now six of us, 6 osteopaths, a Pilates instructor, and some counsellors. So they're both kind of multidisciplinary in that respect. They kind of try and be holistic. One is obviously less than half the size of the other. And that's been really interesting, working with a big practice where there's 17 osteopaths and one where there's 6. And I think I've learned a lot from both practices in terms of that. So obviously both sides, in terms of input, has been great. Like, with the bigger practice where there's 17 osteopaths, there's a lot of people doing different types of practice, which is really good. So we have like a women's health specialist, we've got pediatric specialists, we've got people doing cranial, we've got kind of the more I would classify myself a little bit more structural really now, like structural osteopaths that dry needling. We've got acupuncture specialists. There's a lot of people doing different stuff, and I think in that respect, one, you've got people to plug for different things. So if you've got a question with someone with women's health, there's an osteopath that I can go to and say, look, I've got this woman, she's blah blah blah, what do you think? Or, if you want a more structural opinion, there's people to ask for that. If you want people that cranial and you want to explore that a bit, you can go to people like that. So I think in terms of a big practice, you've got a wider spread of people with different specialities, which has been good to plug into. The only thing with that is it's quite hard to actually connect with those people because they're all busy. They're all on different times. How the practices work, it's so big that we come together on a Wednesday for lunchtime. We have a CPD every Wednesday lunchtime for half an hour. And some of us are there on that day, so we gather and we see those people. But some of the people you never see because they're on different days, they work different hours. They're doing, so if you want to tap into that, you have to, you know who they are and you can connect with them if you want to message them or ring them, but you won't generally always see them. Whereas the smaller practice, you see everyone all the time and you have more time with them. So you see them for lunch, you see them in breaks, you see them, and also they're able to actually come into your treatment. So at the Ilkley practice, if you need help, they're there and they will come in and they will support you. Whereas the bigger practice, everyone's too busy and it's you can't, there's not that level of, it's not the same thing really, but you do have a level of support there. It's just a different, it's different. Yeah, the practices are definitely different. And we've had the CPD, more talking at the bigger clinic, because how that all runs, you have that CPD where you come together and talk about stuff. But at the smaller practice, they've got a bit more flexibility to work, to block time off where you're all in and actually do hands-on CPD and technique classes. So we had sort of every fortnight from a few months in, we had sort of manipulation CPD with the head osteopath, and that was I just realized you come out and you can't manipulate anyone, and you need that mentoring, like, and that was so vital. And we're still doing that now, actually. So obviously it stopped over COVID, but we've restarted that. So every fortnight we get sort of hands-on and go through cases and stuff, and we have 2 hours with the or an hour, I think it is an hour, with the head sort of principal going through that. So it's so much support, and also, yeah, it's so vital that if I was on my own, it's very challenging, I think, very, very challenging to develop yourself.
Absolutely. And what would you have, and what's been useful for you in terms of CPD? Have you done any CPD over the last year or so that you thought, gosh, this has been really helpful?
Do you know what? It's actually interesting. I think that's probably one of my pieces of advice, is that you come out and you think, right, what can I do? What courses? What did it? And I spent the first 2 months of practice like thinking about which course shall I do? What did I do? I'm really like frantic about what I need to do next. And actually, I've done my 30 hours, or I've done a lot more, to be honest. I've probably done 9, like in lockdown, I did 2 hours a day. I absolutely smashed it. But because I had nothing else to do and I was interested in stuff, so I spent I've probably done like 90 hours over this year. But anyway, but it's all like what I just do the job. Like, I've not done any outside courses where I've gone to learn something. I've done like online, over lockdown predominantly, really, because there's nothing else to do. So I did the sort of Academy for Physical Medicine. I did that, and that was that plus a bit of reading added up to 2 hours a day, really. But it was just stuff I was interested in, and outside of that, when I'm actually working, I struggle to do anything else really with that and training and stuff. And I've got ideas of courses I would like to go on to, but it's taken me a whole year to get to the point I'm ready to learn again. I'm ready to go on an actual CPD course. And I think that's probably the advice I'd give to new graduates, is just do the job and learn the thing, because it takes so long to actually get comfortable doing the treatments, learning how to look after people, learning how to do the job. It's like, you do your theory test and then you learn how to drive. You know what I mean? You pass your driving test and then you learn how to drive. It's exactly the same thing, and it takes you at least a year to become fairly competent, I think, and I've still got a long way to go, and I know that. But yeah, I would just say, just go to work, and if there's anything that's interesting, what I do is, so I have a post-it note on my desk, and if there's something interesting that's come up or I've forgotten or I'm not sure, I write it on the note, because if I don't, I forget. So I'll write revise fibromyalgia or revise RA, and I take that sticky note and I put it on there's a place in my house that I put them, and then I make sure on a Sunday night or a Monday morning those sticky notes I've gone through. So if you need to revise something, I do that, and then so I revise on the go rather than anything big at the minute, because you're just trying to just get on top of normal work, I think, at the minute. Just your basic cases as well, like how to manage those.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you talk about sort of learning to drive and then actually driving, because it's exactly what Andy Mansfield said when I interviewed him a while ago. So and there's definitely echoes of the tutors that we had at clinic.
I love Andy. Yeah, definitely. I probably nicked that from him, to be fair. That's probably where I got it from, and I've completely forgotten. So yeah.
It's okay. We'll give you credit later, Andy.
Oh yeah, you can put that on my note, on my credits.
And speaking of nicking things, there's so many things I stole from you. And that's what I really appreciate having. I think we were in the same clinic group at one point, just for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then somehow I always end up sitting behind you in pathology and diagnosis. I don't know whether it was because we both just wanted to sit at the back, or...
Yeah, I think it might be something like that.
But one thing that I remember, stealing is a strong word, I'd say borrow, that I fully admitted afterwards. We were doing, and one thing that we did do over lockdown is we did cases with second or third years, I can't remember.
That was so good. You see, that was amazing. I definitely want to do more of that as well, because that was really helpful.
Yeah, and it was just so good to reinforce, okay, we do know this stuff and we can sort of, we've been where they are, so we've been able to guide them a little bit. And
Yeah.
one of the things I stole from you was the differentials list.
Yeah, that was funny.
So you had this really good list of differentials of things that you'd cover in your differentials. I remember
Mm.
just stealing that from you. I'm like, yep. And I've used that
Have that one.
since. And it's worked since. I mean, I've
Oh, that's
developed it
so
over
good.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was really, when we did those over lockdown, I think that was really helpful because it reminds you to always go back to the basics, and like, because you can get carried away with stuff. And I think just remember differentials, make sure you've thought about everything. Are there any red flags? And just treat the person, and that's you've covered your basis, you know what I mean, with that. So I think, yeah, that kind of stuff is always good to revise, I think.
Yeah. And has your practice developed since you graduated up until now?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I am a different practitioner to what I was a year ago. I think I'm still, I think it will take, I think you probably, all your osteopathic career, you develop and you maybe change your practice, but I think you've got a good idea within a year of what you like and how you like to treat, I think. And I think I've tried, like, because we've done some cranial stuff, and I do actually integrate some of that now and then. I definitely think I'm more structural though. And I think that's okay. You don't have to always fight that. Do you know what I mean? But I do try, I do bring some cranial work in when I think it's really appropriate. And I think actually what I've learned is just to be really adaptable to what the client needs, and my practice changes so dramatically between one client to another. So like, I might be really soft, cranial, visceral with a patient, and then be really structural and manipulate everything on another patient. Do you know what I mean? So I think what I've learned is that I am a very flexible, adaptable practitioner, and quite sensitive to what the client needs. And I think that is something that I want to try and pride myself on, and not get too stuck in one way or the other. And I think I want to develop all sides of osteopathy so that I can, when someone comes in who's very different, I am able to adapt to what they need rather than treat them how I would anyone else, I think. So I think in terms of that, I've become, compared to how I treated as a sports therapist, I've become a lot more adaptable with a lot more tools in my kit to be able to treat different people differently. So I think that's been good over a year.
Yeah. And being an athlete yourself, has that changed your perspective when you treat other athletes that come into the clinic?
Yeah, I think it does really help me in some respects, because I think a lot of the injuries I've had, so I kind of know how it feels to have it. And I think it just, I'm able to kind of reassure people, because I have normally been in their situation and kind of know roughly how long it takes to get better, and what you're thinking at the different processes, and also to how to kind of build them back into sport again. Generally runners, you've got to like put on really tight reins and be like, right, you've got to, a lot of them I get doing couch to 5k, even some of the like high-end runners I get doing couch 5k when they've had a proper injury and they've not run for a long time, because it puts on the reins, and it gets them back into doing running. And that program is literally amazing. It is so good. And I've used stuff like that a lot, but I can like relate to them and their experience. And I think that's, for being an athlete, it allows me to do that well, I think. Yeah. And then I think, because I think everyone can treat athletes. I don't think you have to be a sports person and an osteopath to be able to treat sports people. I think you can, but I think it just gives you a level of understanding of what emotionally what that person's going through, potentially. Yeah.
Yeah. And the psychology behind sport is huge.
Yeah. And we're all nuts, you know.
Well,
We've got
you
a
and me
screw
both.
loose. We're all just completely obsessive. So, it's working with people like that if you know their obsessive drive, and you can work with people when you can relate to them, I think so. Yeah, so I think that's helpful when it
Yeah.
comes to treating athletes, just knowing what makes them tick a bit.
And if there was somebody listening to this or watching this that wanted to go down sort of like looking and treating athletes either in private practice or in a sporting sort of club type facility, what would you say to them? Where should they go to look? What would they read? Who would they talk to?
Yeah, I think, that's quite challenging actually. And I think I'm still developing that here. So the practice I'm in Ilkley, we have a big sporting community here. But I'm only just starting to see the runners come through. And I think it just takes time. I think it depends where, yeah, maybe let's start with like, choose which clinic you're in. Like if you want to be, treating sports people, you've probably got to decide whether the clinic you're going into, are they attracting sports people? Like that's the first start, I think, because you can go into like an actual sports, clinic environment where there are like, they call them, I don't know, osteopathic sports centres, or I don't know, there's places that specialise in treating sports people. And if you go there, you're going to see sports people. That's fair enough. The one at the practice I'm in isn't actually there to it's not, what's the word, it's not labeling itself as a sports centre to treat athletes, but we do get, because it's a small community, we get athletes coming in, and if you're interested in that, you're going to naturally attract those people anyway, and you're going to just develop your practice, and then that runner's going to tell another runner, and that runner. So I think you base yourself somewhere. If you want to work with sports people, either go and look for a sports clinic and work in something like that, or just base yourself in a practice where there is a sporting community, that there's a few people coming in, from here and there, and then they will find you. If that's what you enjoy and that's what you do, they will naturally come. And I think that's what I was a bit nervous about, is that I was like, I'm not actually in a sports clinic. Like, am I going to be treating sports people? And I think over a year, I've seen that naturally just start to develop. It's going to take a lot longer, I think, but it is starting to develop. I'm seeing more local sports people coming in, and that's because it's word of mouth. Once one runner tells another, or one cyclist tells another, it does get out there. And I think long term, I would like to do a bit more sport specific work, and I think that will come, but I think I need to be a better osteopath first, and I think I need to be, really confident in my ability, and before I go out and search for elite sports work, I think. But maybe I'm wrong, some people jump straight into that, and I have done some elite sports work, and I have done some of that. But I just want to become a really good general practitioner first, I think, and then start to engage in my passion, which is treat sports people. But just need to get good first,
Yeah, and that's what I love about this, is that everyone's story is so unique to them, and everyone's development is taking them on so many different routes. And it's just interesting to hear where everyone's at a year on, and how different but similar we all are.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Because our foundation is the same. We all have the same
dream. It is, yeah. We've all had the same sort of, the same input, haven't we? So it's interesting how people take that and what they do with it. I love that, though. I think that's brilliant. That's why it's such a good industry, because you can go in so many different directions, and you can do whatever you want with it, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to say thank you for your time, because this has been such, I feel like we could just keep talking we've been talking for like over an hour, but I feel like we just keep talking.
I could just keep talking. Love it. Absolutely love it.
So when is your next competition?
So I've actually managed to start racing. So I started at end of June, so beginning of August I started racing. So I've had like a month racing, which has been such a relief. It's been so good. But it's very short. My season's been 5 weeks, and I've done 8 races in 5 weeks. So I'm absolutely shattered, but it's been amazing, and it's been so good. And so my last race is end of September. It's a half Ironman. So that's kind of the highlight of the year, as it were, because it's kind of what I've been aiming for, to do a half Ironman. It wasn't I was supposed to be in Mallorca in October, that got cancelled, and Canada and somewhere Budapest. I was supposed to be all over the world, but it's fine, and I've really come to terms with it, and I'm just really happy that I've been able to do some races. So yeah, so half Ironman end of September, the big
Yeah.
one.
And I've been following your Instagram like
Aww.
closely. And so every time like you post about a race, I feel this sort of like surge of support and be like, oh my God,
Oh,
she's
that's so
doing it.
nice. Thank you.
So where can people find you, either in clinic or on social media?
Yeah, so I probably put most effort into my Instagram. So that's probably the best place people can sort of contact me. So that's the Body Mechanic 101. Yeah, that's probably the best place really. I like in lockdown actually, I started putting like videos up of like I started including some of my osteopathic work into my Instagram, which I was really nervous about doing because I know when you're at risk of being, you know, people have an opinion on stuff. So that was a big thing for me to start doing that, but I'm glad I have, because it's really opened up a lot of connections with other osteopaths. Actually, more osteopaths are starting to connect with me, and that's really cool. So I'm going to kind of keep doing that, like every other week or something, put something related to sports and osteopathy. So that's probably the best place people can contact me and see what I'm doing really.
Yeah, and they were really good. I remember watching your videos, and I think you did one on running or on foot
Yeah,
mechanics. And
yeah.
then I was watching, I was like, oh, taking notes. I was like, oh, I hadn't thought about
Oh,
that.
bless you. Thank you.
So you do it really well. And I know social media can be really exposing and
Yeah,
very
it's
vulnerable because you don't
scary.
know who's watching and
Exactly.
what they're commenting
Very
on.
scary.
But I think you do it really well.
Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
great. Well, thank you so much for your time, Britt.
Oh, my
And
pleasure. Thanks for having me on. And sorry it's taken literally about 5 months to get me to do this.
not at all. And good luck with the race in September.
Thank you so much.
Take
See you
care.
later.
Bye.